I'm going to ask Chief Newman to come up and give a little pitch. There's been some questions about the recent surplusing of the former community resource officer's pickup truck, and Chief Newman has some information for council that I think will be interesting and answer some questions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the record, I'm Doug Newman. I'm your police chief, City of DuPont. And there were some questions. Could you enlarge that possibly? Go full projection mode. No, actually go to...
You were right, the screen show.
Yeah, screen show.
Left, right there.
So it's best to show you through the pictures there. So there have been some questions about the surplus of vehicle 156, which is the 2015 Chevrolet four-wheel drive pickup truck you see on the screen there, which you approved, the council approved after I recommended its surplus last month. It's since been sold above fair market value to a neighboring county sheriff's department for rural search and rescue, mountain operations, and disaster contingencies like flooding. There's been some questions as why we did this, and we welcome those questions. Any opportunity we get to educate the public on why we make operational decisions at your police department, we welcome. So over the next few minutes, I just want to give everyone a full perspective, and then I'm open for questions. So when I was appointed as your police chief in January, my first role was to immediately identify any risks, liabilities, safety issues, or usefulness within our department. And that was across the board: policy, equipment, patrol operations. Bottom line up front, this decision was made for operational necessity and efficiency for a couple of reasons. The terms we use in police departments across the country for vehicles is either pursuit rated or patrol rated. There's no real definition to that, but there's some things that are standard. To ensure a vehicle doesn't have a high center of gravity, a patrol rated fully marked police vehicle needs to accelerate quickly and maneuver safely. And also to have visibility, so in times of need, when the public sees a fully marked police vehicle, they can engage that vehicle in times of emergency, and that vehicle and its operator is ready to respond. So as you see, based on the information I was able to find, the documented information I was able to find, the vehicle was modified in April 2018. The two pictures on top that you see, the one to the far right, was pre-modification. That's when it was used as a community resource vehicle assigned to the community resource officer. It was a multitask patrol vehicle. I have right there EVOC tested. EVOC is an acronym we use for Emergency Vehicle Operations Course. We use the Washington State Patrol's Emergency Vehicle Operation Course, the EVOC course, for a variety of reasons. One is it helps the driver get accustomed to their vehicle under all conditions, tight turns, high speeds, and they have a wet track that we can simulate inclement weather for safety purposes. To the left, you see the post-modification pictures. Of the modifications that occurred, the vehicle received 35-inch tires, 20-inch custom rims or wheels, cosmetic fender flares. The push bar you see on the community resource vehicle has been removed and replaced with a winch, which I'll address quickly. And the measurement you see in the bottom part of the screen, that vehicle is approximately 25 inches from the ground into the passenger compartment, which I'm going to cover. And what's interesting, I was just sitting with the deputy chief here, this table is just a little bit taller, just eyeballing it, than 2 feet. So this gives you a little bit of a gauge. The table's a little shorter. This is a little bit of a gauge. So here's what we identified. January 10th, I come on board January 1st. January 10th, I put out a directive: this vehicle shall not be operated under any reasons. One is, like I said, it's a fully marked police vehicle. So if we only have one officer on the road and this is the only vehicle that's on the road used for patrol operations, people are going to flag down this vehicle. And one of the first areas of liability we've identified is that prisoner compartment. If you look, that is equipped with a full prisoner cage, which means that that vehicle is supposed to transport prisoners in the back. That 2-foot rise, I cannot ask my officers to lift an adult handcuffed behind the back suspect into the back and out of that vehicle, particularly under dark conditions or wet conditions. It's an extraordinary liability, in my opinion, and I think it puts the city at risk that we don't need to take for injury to suspects that we have a custodial responsibility to protect. If you look at the winch, I wanted to do a little historical research before I initiated the directive that the vehicle shall not be used. I asked staff across the board if we had a search and rescue capability. The only answer that I received from staff who'd worked here for quite some time, much longer than me, is that we do have an off-road need here in DuPont. The primary off-road need is the trails that we have. But those trails are so narrow, a normal-sized vehicle can't access those trails anyway, and we have like a John Deere Gator type all-terrain quad to access those trails. The fleet we currently have, keeping with the intent to make sure our fleet is uniform, we have from 2015 to 2018, we have Ford Explorers that are all-wheel drive, and they provide all the capability we need for different road conditions. So the winch brings a couple of issues up. One, there is a liability with that winch. As far as we know, there's no one in the department that's trained for winch operations. That is a specialty, because the liability is if that winch breaks while towing or pulling something, it can hurt the operator or bystanders. Second, it removes the push bar from the original Crow vehicle, which is used for moving disabled vehicles off the road to increase public safety. Then we moved to the tires. Those tires, I did some research, they're great for off-road. They're Q-rated. A Q-rated tire is rated at 99 miles an hour. Our current standard, law enforcement standard, and what your fleet is equipped with are Y-rated tires, rated up to 168 miles an hour. We probably will never go 168 miles an hour, but we will go over 100 miles an hour if we ask our officers to pursue a violent felon in keeping with our policy. Lastly, the high center of gravity. If you look in the upper left-hand corner of the modified truck on the lower picture, you have a directional speed radar. That is a hard-mounted speed radar. Directional radar means that that vehicle can be traveling northbound and pick up a speeder coming southbound. And we've all seen that. I mean, I even slow down when I'm off duty and I pass a cop, not that I ever speed. But that means that that vehicle is also equipped for traffic enforcement capabilities, which means that if in that scenario traveling northbound and a speeder passes southbound, that vehicle needs to make an immediate U-turn and accelerate and maneuver through traffic. At that high center of gravity, I cannot put officers in undue risk for that. Lastly, after talking to staff and finding some historical documents in the agency through the department, the purpose of this vehicle, I think it was a well-intended purpose. The purpose was to make it a community-oriented police vehicle, or as they call it, a COPS vehicle. The problem is that modified vehicle is now a unitasker, and we already have a public relations vehicle. It's that 1983 Dodge Diplomat purchased a couple of administrations ago. We have an antique police car. So now we are looking at a liability, we're looking at a lack of efficiency, and we need to prepare our fleet, hopefully, for a growing police department that's going to keep up with the needs of a growing city. And I have 2 unitaskers, and quite frankly, it was a safety and a practical decision to ask for surplus. And I'm open to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And Council, there's other information we can talk about later if you're interested.